the energies of the youth, reaping the dividends, the demographic dividends on the continent, we can actually serve as solution to the global climate crisis rather than victim. These were part of the issues that were also discussed and deliberated upon here at the summit. The leaders also discussed issues relating to how we can harness also our other natural capitals to address climate change. And so in a whole, this summit tends to showcase the potentials that lies across the continent as a solution provider rather than a victim. And so calling also on the global north to join force with the continent to address the global challenge. Honorable members, I think of specific notes for this House is also the discussion around and the commitment of our heads of state and government at this summit, committing to develop and implement policies and regulations that would drive investment in green growth and inclusive development. Again, when we talk about policies and regulations, this falls squarely within the docket of our parliamentarians. And taking back, people ask, is this going to be talk as usual? From one summit, from one conference to another. Now, what are we going to take forward? What are the responsibilities of each and every stakeholders on the continent? So, out of the declaration that will come out of the Nairobi Declaration on Climate Change, our call to action, you will see knocking at your door are various policies that we need to put in place to enhance investment in green growth and inclusive development. So, honorable member, for countries that are making effort to put various legislative frameworks in order, I think the rally point will be from this declaration and taking a cue from countries, member states across the continent that have enacted their climate change PUs and other policies so that we can fast track this investment. I've heard issues of global goal on adaptation. Our leaders took cognizance of that and recognized and welcomed that in the declaration. So the global goal on adaptation, yeah, we're committing, emitting just less than 4%, but adaptation remains our key priority on the continent. And so we need to accelerate that. Also remember that at Sharm el-Sheikh, honorable members, the issues of loss and damage gained traction. And we had the Loss and Damage Fund that was established at Sharm el-Sheikh, COP27. But we don't know the architectures and the modalities of how the loss and damage will operate yet. So this summit, the issues of fast acceleration of the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund was also things that our leaders also took note of and called for immediate and fast operationalization of that. That might also require some legislative backings when it comes, because from the experience of the Green Climate Fund, we know they complain how difficult it is for African countries to access climate finance. Yes, the money is there, but when you look at what is required to assess this climate finance to address the impact of climate change on the continent, honorable members, you agree with me that in some cases we need to even fly in consultants to come and help us develop bankable project proposals. Again, we need to put in place institutions, strong institutions, and our leaders took note of that. The issues relating to the fast and acceleration of the operationalization of the Africa Continental Free Trade Areas as one of the vehicles to help us also enhance the implementation of our strategies and the climate change issues was also a thing that heads of state and government discussed at the summit. And like I said, this is just a brief highlight, honorable members. But in this journey, as far as the African Union Commission is concerned, we cannot walk it alone. We would need the support of the parliamentarians from the various member states, the regional parliamentarians, and the continental. So these are just few highlights and key from what transpired in the past 2.5 days. Thank you so much, honorable member, and for giving me this opportunity to share briefly. I thank you, and I so submit.
Thank you very much. I think we can show him an appreciation. So, honorable members, that is the gist of the declaration that heads of state gathered in Nairobi made. And I would urge all of us to take time to read the declaration and possibly make statements in our national parliaments on this declaration. So now, that's what the heads of states have said. The question now is will this Nairobi declaration deliver any benefit and tangible transformation to the people of Africa? And I say so because all the conversations that we've had in this summit borders on people. And the question will be that the over 400 million children in Africa are not here. The over 60% of our population that are youth are not here. The over 100 million Africans who are persons living with disability are not here. The over 74 million persons who are aged in Africa are not here. And the over 730 million women in Africa are not here. So how will this declaration impact the lives of all these people? For me, the answer is that we, the representative of these people, will have to play our role in order to ensure that there is a positive transformation of the rhetoric of this language of the declaration to tangible actions on the ground. Members of Parliament serve as the bridge between the high-level policy process and what can happen on the ground. In terms of our legislative role, in terms of our exercising the power of the purse, which means that we need to interrogate national budgets and make sure that there is provision for actions that reflect the commitments that are made in this declaration. It also means that we need to step up our oversight over the executive to make sure that things that we have committed to do are being done. And for us, we also need to move beyond the talk, because we always say that we have to move beyond the talk. So we parliamentarians would need to begin to take positive action on the ground to demonstrate that we are not also falling into the same temptation of being rhetorical, but that we are actually doing something. And by this, I'm calling on every member of parliament to be a climate champion. In our parliaments, you often hear some parliamentarians who are not part of, for example, the Climate Change Committee or caucus, or the Environment Committee, saying that, oh, the climate change people are doing that, the climate change people are doing that. To the extent that every member of parliament is a representative of the people, and climate change is about the people, every member of parliament must be a climate champion. It's as simple as that. And we need to go back communicating and reinforcing this thought in the minds of our colleague members of parliament, so that everyone will have that same level of consciousness about the importance of us taking positive action on the ground. So we want to see, for example, as I hear yesterday, we tried to document some examples. So I want to see, for example, examples like Honorable Esther Pesaris helping school children to collect PET bottles, plastic bottles, to build school walls. That is a concrete climate action on the ground. We want to see example like Charity in the Parliament of Kenya leading tree planting. We want to see examples like Hamza from Ghana's Parliament mobilizing traditional leaders and explaining to them what climate change means in their own language and in a way that they can understand. So we want to see more of these concrete climate actions by us, so that when we are able to demonstrate that we are people who are not just talking, but we are also living by action. And by so doing, we will then have the moral authority to be able to ask the executives to move beyond talks. I think that is basically what we as members of parliament are supposed to do. In moving forward with this declaration, it is also important that we take action at the continental level, because a number of these things will only happen if there is a momentum of parliamentary voice on the continent. And that is why, for me, the African Parliamentarians Network for Climate Action, for example, is an important network that must be sustained, that must be strengthened, so that all parliamentarians across the continent who are at the forefront of climate action will be able to come together and then speak on issues that affect the continent as a whole, and as it were, to provide oversight over the continental bodies. I know that PAP is there, but I think that in terms of action, when we have the MPs who are really at the forefront of climate change discussion in their parliaments and across the continent, we'll be able to exert much more influence on the African Union, for example. At the regional level, we expect the same. At the country level, we expect the same. So parliaments, I'm sure in Kenya, in Nigeria, because of the caucuses that existed, that is why the drive for a legislation was given that kind of thrust and momentum. And so if we have parliamentary caucuses in our national parliaments, we will be able to mobilize the critical mass of MPs to provide advocacy and also to be able to champion the cause of action in our parliaments. And so I will urge all of us that as we go back to our parliaments, if there is no climate change caucus, it is better we go ahead and then try to form one. We are all there to support you. The network is there. If you need advice on how to create a climate caucus in your parliament, we will be able to provide support for you, so that each parliament in Africa, we are sure that there is a group of MPs who are championing the cause of climate action in those parliaments. And so that is the kind of things we want to do beyond here, so that we also don't just come here and then do the talks, and then where we go. So we will continue to monitor what we are doing. We will continue to solicit your views and cases of climate actions that each MP is taking, and then also to forge ahead in that direction. And on that note, I would say that capacity becomes a very important ingredient for our activism. If we don't build our own understanding and capacity of the issues as parliamentarians, we will not be able to act. And so I expect that as we go to our parliaments, those of us who have been privileged to be here, we should be able to hold meetings with other members and share at least the declaration, copies of whatever materials that we have, share with them. In that light, we are also trying to form working groups under our network. So far, we have a working group on energy transition, renewable energies and energy transition. We have a working group on climate finance. We have a working group on climate adaptation. So at least every MP here should be able to join one of these working groups so that we build our capacity and then we share information. Just to tell you, last 2 weeks, a group of some 30 MPs across the globe were in Bonn on the invitation of the United Nations G20 program. And out of that 30, about 7 of them got information about that training program from the platform, from the Parliamentarians Network for Climate Action platform. And when they got the information and they applied, subsequently they got selected. So if we didn't have that kind of network, that maybe these people would not have had the privilege to receive the information. So every one of us should be part of the network. We are not creating any superstructures. We are not creating any competitive institutions or whatever. It's a network. And the purpose of the network is to bring us together as African MPs at the forefront of the climate fight and to advocate for action at continental level, at the regional level, and at national level. And also to empower us to be able to undertake specific climate actions as members of parliament in our own constituencies. And so I think basically this is what I would say about the way forward in terms of what is expected of us as members of parliament from this summit. So on that note, I would try and get us into the statement that we were supposed to have. The reason why we did not open up for a negotiated statement is that one, we didn't have the benefit of time, and again, because we thought that PAP had already organized a dialogue and come up with a declaration. And so we thought we should just listen to what the heads of states will say and then just make a comment on that. And so I'm sure the copies of the statement will be shared at the right time. But before I give a gist of that, we agreed to give country delegations a space of 2 minutes for each country to make a statement on in respect of the declaration. In respect of this parliamentary dialogue, and then we can conclude with the outcome statement. And so, who will help us with the lists? Okay, so the country list? Yes. Okay, so we'll go by the country list, and then, so it's in no particular order. We call Zambia. Is a MP for Zambia here? Okay, no. Then Uganda. Okay, so I see Honorable Jacinta, the Vice Chair of the Climate Committee.
Thank you, Chair. Jacinta Tito is my name, from Uganda, heading the Ugandan delegation. Ugandan delegation associates with all the resolutions of the African Climate Week and Summit. We urge all the industrialized countries to take responsibility and provide the required funding for climate change resilience and adaptation with practical actions and demonstration projects. We strongly call upon all partners to promote trade between and among than providing the high interest loans. We also call upon all the stakeholders to agree on good, favorable price carbon, and then also provide financing to develop a climate resilience economy in Uganda and Africa as a whole. We appeal for our involvement in all the initiatives. I thank you.
Very much. Egypt, I cannot see Egypt here, so we move to, which country is next? Mali. Is Mali here? Okay. Sierra Leone. Oh, Guinea. Is Guinea here? Benin? Okay, Benin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to intervene in French because this morning my colleague of Guinea intervened by making the demand to express himself in French also in our meetings. In fact, because I'm coming from a Francophone country, let me intervene in French. Monsieur le Président.
Excuse me, let's be sure first. You have to, if you want to speak in French, then you should come here so that it can be interpreted.
Okay.
Yeah, where they have written the... Yeah, Bon.
Okay. Monsieur le Président.
Honorable Chair, you all know that the effect of climate change are felt at all the levels and in all African countries. The case of Benin is typical. Even though we are not in the Sahel or in a desert, we can feel the effects of climate change in Benin. Indeed, in this dialogue, we speak as parliamentarians about the effects of the climate change on our countries. But what I would like to say is in each of our countries, we need the political will of our states, because the way those issues are accounted for in our countries shows that we are not really aware about this cause. The role of each MP here is to create or raise awareness with leaders in our countries in order to have the climate change issue and its effects as a national concern. We can even include the mechanisms of climate adaptation in the educational system. Regarding Benin, the authorities are taking measures in order to mitigate the situation. We are also supported by GIZ, the European Union, and the French Agency of Development through projects like borehole development, constructions, reforestation, and the construction of hydropower dams. The effects of climate change can be felt also in livestock, in the growth of livestock, because it creates droughts, and the livestock doesn't have food in the region because there's no vegetation, and that encourages livestock and cattle farmers to migrate and creates conflicts between farmers and livestock farmers, and that creates community conflicts. Thank you, Honorable Chair. There is a lot to say. We cannot say everything here because we don't have enough time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we go to Namibia. Honorable, get closer to the mic, please. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Let me start all over again. Thank you. I was just saying that as a member of parliament from Namibia, and at the same time, the Southern Africa representative at the African Parliament Network for Climate Action, I positively stand by all prestige speakers at this summit that when it comes to climate crisis, Africa, we do know what the problems are, and we know the tangible collective solutions to these problems. Through many dialogues at different platforms, we know that there are climate finances or funds that had been committed more than 14 years ago now, that must be accessed through financial climate requirements to mitigate the damages. Namibia is one of many countries in Southern Africa that has been drastically affected by drought for a number of consecutive years. So far, Namibia has implemented projects funded by the Green Climate Fund through the Environmental Investment Fund and Global Environment Facility with the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform in our 14 regions, and also one funded by the Adaptation Fund. These projects aimed at increasing the country's adaptation and mitigation measures, as well as bring the reality of resilience initiatives to the community. The discussions of carbon emissions tax should not be a punishment, but rather the right thing to do. After all, climate crisis has no discrimination. On the other hand, as parliamentarians, we are encouraged to study our current African climate policies and see how to review them to address the current realities. We must encourage our private sectors and the youth for innovations on how to raise more money within Africa to energy transition and of course, self-sustainability. I therefore support the African Leadership Nairobi Declaration on Climate Change and call to action to table at the UN Assembly and at the COP28, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll try and keep to 3 minutes, please, so that we can exhaust the list and move on. So now on my list, I see Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My very distinguished colleagues, I still remain Honorable Solomon Maren, and I am from Nigeria. Having listened to the resolutions by the African heads of states on the African, arising from the African Climate Summit, Nigeria supports in total the resolutions as aforementioned. We also hope to go back as Parliament to look deeply into some of the missing gaps in the laws that are required in order for the executive arm of government to achieve these resolutions without any form of hindrance. But we also look at the contributions by the major emitters as a very serious matter that the African head of states must look at and take to COP28 so that we discuss, because the continuous heavy emissions vis-a-vis what we are trying to do to cut down emissions from 3.8% to get it lower, and they are on the increase. It shows that the world is getting more endangered than ever before. And we think that these issues must be addressed properly. Two, the issue of renewable energy. Yes, the issue of renewable energy may be possible if Africans are allowed to take responsibility of some of the solid minerals that are mined from this continent. Because in producing solar modules, you need some of these metals that are mined from Africa. In producing storage capacities for some of this power generation, you still need minerals mined from Africa. And if Africa do not stand up to defend the exploitation of these mineral resources, we will continuously be on the receiving end. And I therefore wish to call on all parliamentarians to seek justice for African minerals. And I think this will go a long way in saving the continent from what is going through today. By and large, we accept the resolutions as stated by the African head of states, and Nigeria remains a key player in the Committee of Nations, and we stand by every commitment.
Thank you very much. Now I will go back and take Zambia. After that, I will take Gambia. Zambia.
Zambia and Gambia. Well, thank you so much. In solidarity with the African Climate Summit called to increase financing for climate change adaptation and mitigation funds in Africa, and the commitment at country level to climate responsive laws and sensitivity to the interests of the vulnerable groups. We, the Zambian Parliamentary Caucus on Environment and Climate Change, we join fellow parliamentarians across Africa in solidarity with the African Climate Summit Agent Corps for increased financing dedicated to climate change adaptation and mitigation efforts across the African continent. Climate change poses an existential threat to our nations, our people, and the delicate ecosystems that sustains us. And it is our collective responsibility to take bold and immediate actions. Recognizing the imperative nature of this crisis, we pledge as Zambia and Southern Africa our unwavering support to lobby our executives in our individual countries to allocate adequate resources for climate change adaptation and mitigation within our countries and the broad African context. We are committed to working collaboratively with international partners and stakeholders to increase the budget allocations in our country to the Ministry of Green Economy and secure the necessary funding required to combat the devastating effects of climate change using local aid-based solutions. We understand that sustainable development and the well-being of our citizens depend on our ability to address climate change comprehensively. Furthermore, we join stakeholders in calling for the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund, and we are also committed to enacting robust climate-responsive laws in Zambia that will guide our nation in a journey towards a more sustainable green growth and inclusive development. These laws will not only outline clear objectives and priorities, but will also establish mechanisms to ensure that we as members of parliament, we provide adequate oversight and effective implementation of the adaptation plans and the nationally determined contributions. We believe that legislative action is pivotal in driving the necessary transformative changes required to mitigate and adapt to climate change. We are acutely aware of the profound impact that climate change has on the most vulnerable members of our society, particularly children and the youths. Their voices and the concerns will be at the forefront of our decision-making processes, and we commit to fostering an inclusive approach that is sensitive to their interests and ensures that their needs are addressed in a more climate-related policy and initiatives. In conclusion, Zambia stands resolute in its commitments to address the climate crisis, and we stand in solidarity with other governments, African counterparts, and the global community in the fight against climate change, and support the Nairobi Declaration and these resolutions and its call to action. Together we shall work.
Thank you very much. I think we get a gist of your message. Shall we go to Gambia and then from Gambia, South Sudan? Gambia, you may have the floor now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good afternoon, honorable members of parliament. Mr. Chairman, when I received a notice that I was supposed to deliver a short statement, I was told that it's a 5-minute statement. So what I prepared, I cannot read within 3 minutes, and I want to indulge you. I want to ask you to allow me to read the
You have
statement.
spent 1 minute making, if you had gone ahead, I'm sure you...
Well, anyway, okay. African countries are increasingly becoming vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, such as rising temperatures, frequent droughts, and inundating floods. Consequently, the continent is missing out on opportunities for greater energy independence, as well as access to green investment and export opportunities. African countries urgently require effective mechanisms and frameworks for responding to and influencing the climate change agenda nationally, regionally, and globally. We, the Parliament of the Gambia, by virtue of the foregoing, acknowledge that there is an urgent need for a resolute response to past comprehensive approaches, incorporating the acceleration of adaptation through stronger international climate finance, widespread adoption of renewable energy sources, prioritizing energy efficiency, and fostering the development of sustainable energy infrastructures. To achieve this, there are mostly judicious policy interventions that expedite necessary reforms, bolster investments, drive decisive climate action, and ensure equitable access to efficient energy resources. That is the only sure way of Africa realizing a greener and more sustainable future. The indispensable role of parliaments and parliamentarians in legislation, budget approval, and oversight on policy making and implementation ensures accountability and effectiveness of governments. Furthermore, parliaments and parliamentarians provide vital links with constituents that can facilitate effective climate action at the grassroots level. Although parliamentarians work with their counterparts to build synergies and coordinated approaches for common regional interests, African parliamentary institutions and parliamentarians do not receive the requisite support in climate negotiations processes. Most development partners focus mainly on the executive arm of government with little or no involvement of parliament and parliamentarians. Innovations focused on climate action based on technology, finance, social, and institutional structures are needed. This must be underpinned by enabling sector aligned policies as well as appropriate legal, regulatory, and institutional frameworks.
Honorable, be winding up, please. Okay, thank you. Sudan, South Sudan.
It is my privilege to have attended the parliamentarian dialogue. It was really encouraged that the parliamentarians from the global world come together with different experience. I have discovered that people across the world, especially the government officials and politicians, are interested in what is good for humanity. For me, as a South Sudanese member of parliament, I'm sure that I learned a lot of knowledge about the environment and climate change. And I think the time when I went back from here, we'll start establish environment caucus, because we don't have the caucus that in our parliament. And I was seeing Senator John here. I will ask him to give me drop from their bill that they've passed, so that this is where we can learn from each other. So I'm just learning, because when I heard the statement for different MP from different global, their statement is different from us, because situation in South Sudan is different, is well known for all of you. But now I declare myself here as one of young parliamentarians from South Sudan to champion the issue of climate change in South Sudan. And I hope next meeting I will come with report what we did in South Sudan, so that we will follow other nations as all. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very succinct one, very, very straight to the point. That is what we are interested in. We are interested in what are you going to do, and what kind of progress we should expect from you. Understanding that climate change affects our countries in different forms is something that I believe all of us here can appreciate. And so without being repetitive, I think we should just go straight to what is your message for us in a very succinct way. I think South Sudan has done that very clearly to us. Okay, so we move to Kenya, and then we'll come to Ghana.
Thank you very much, moderator. And I think it is fair that we stick to the time, especially the people of Kenya, because we are the one who's spoken more. Maybe because we are many, and we would want to thank everybody who made it to this particular dialogue and this particular summit, and to give our position as parliamentarians from Kenya. that we support the Nairobi Declaration that has been made today. And I would want to say, just as our Speaker, the Right Honorable Speaker Moses Wetangula said, the 23 billion that has been committed from governments and partners, $23 billion that has been committed to this particular declaration, then it is apparent that members of parliament will have to play a very major role in it. Otherwise, it will become just a declaration if we do not follow resources with that kind of a declaration. Honorable Moderator, again from the Kenyan delegation, we feel that making the event biannual gives us an opportunity to take stock of what we have been able to achieve over the years, so that we are able to follow up and see and understand exactly why, how far we've gone in implementation of the declaration. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Moderator, we are again very, very encouraged, and we want to take it that we shall continue urging that the loss and damage that was loss and damage fund is actually that was agreed upon in the COP27, because as we have all agreed, the people who are feeling this pinch more are the African people. So we feel that they should be actualized. Finally, Honorable Moderator, there's something that has come out very, very clearly in the declaration: the implementation of the African Union biodiversity and strategy and action plan. Because what we have been facing over the years, and I think one of the speakers has mentioned, Honorable Moderator, we make very many declarations, but we do not follow to see how far we have achieved of those declarations. We have very good, we have a very good document from the AU, and if we do not follow on implementing that action plan, Honorable Moderator, we might find ourselves doing as many declarations and doing very, very little to it, Mr. Moderator. So finally, I would want to make that commitment just as our brother from South Sudan has requested, because it is in the declaration, and please allow me in under 1 minute to mention that it is in the declaration that we increase the Africa's share in the carbon markets. If then we have to get that right, we have to get legislations right, and that is our principle.
Thank you very much. I can assure you that we will continue to have this dialogue. When we started conceptualizing this dialogue and writing the proposal, we were not sure whether we were going to be successful. But through hard work and cooperation from our partners, I'm sure in due course we will acknowledge them. Here we are having this dialogue as part of the summit. And this is something that must continue. And maybe going on, we should not be just doing declarations, but then coming back and then each country accounting for what our parliaments have done and are doing to make sure that climate action is real in our countries. And I go to Ghana.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Chair, to speak for Ghana. Let me mention that our excellencies, the presidents, were on point on their submission, and it is time for us to walk the talk. If you look at the submission of the excellencies, the issues that they have enumerated, talking about issues of financing, talking about issues of policies, they cannot achieve that in isolation. They need parliamentarians to support them, because we are the ones going to hold them accountable. We are the ones going to ensure that they pass the necessary laws. We are the ones who are supposed to ensure that the various budgetary allocations they make towards climate change comes to pass. We have to do that. So it is important that we, the parliamentarians, are coming together. I know the show at this particular event is not too encouraging, but I believe, like the chairman did indicate, that subsequent ones will be more organized. I also support the presidents who highlighted, who emphasized on the issue of local actions. We have been promised huge sums of money. The funds are not coming. It is now better for us to think outside the box. Let's think about local actions. What can we do ourselves, particularly the adaptation mitigation measures? Those ones are not beyond us. We can organize ourselves and begin to emphasize those ones locally. I must also mention that capacity building is critical because MPs must take active part in handling the issues of these climate change issues. But to what extent have their capacities been built? We need to build more capacities. If you look at this room, we have select committees in attendance exclusively. We would need to have this particular information spread across all parliamentarians in the various parliaments. So when we get back home, it is important to organize general forum so that we can walk our fellow parliamentarians through the highlights. Then we can begin to Georgia and see how we can put our ideas together and begin to support our presidents. I have also observed that we have a number of civil society organizations working on the matters of climate change. Then we also have government institutions. Sometimes we have that kind of conflict in the implementation.
Thank you very much. Now I have 2 countries on my list remaining, Senegal and Somalia. Is Somalia here? Okay, Somalia. After Somalia, Senegal. Yeah, Guinea, you missed your chance, but I'll come back to you.
Honorable Chair, thank you. I would like to give you a brief of Somalia. The country is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. This vulnerability stems from social, economic, political, and geographical conditions. With increasing climate change, the foundation of the country's economy, stability, and food security are under serious threat. Climate change problems are the most pressing problems in the country. In conclusion, the Somali Parliament looks forward to implementing policies allows to mitigate against the effects of the climate change. So far, we already passed environmental bill, and it's effective now, and we are planning to do climate change bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that succinct statement. Now I take Senegal.
Thank you so much.
To Senegal, I'll take Guinea, and then the Kofi Don Ago of the communication, and that will be the end of the statements.
Senegal Parliament, and I am the representative of this delegation. We are in charge of monitoring and evaluating laws in Senegal. In Senegal, we don't have any law on climate yet, so we are really open to base ourselves on the Kenyan law. We don't have any law on the littoral zones, and that's an issue because we've been looking for such a law for a long time in order to manage our coasts. We want laws in favor of climate action in Senegal, and thanks to the Sustainable Development Committee, we know that the climate change is cut across, and it has to be a point of interest for all committees in the National Assembly. We have a challenge. In 2024, we'll have the oil exploitation and gas exploitation in Senegal that is going to start, and we have to counteract it with renewable energies. You heard Macky Sall talk about renewable energies shares in Senegal, which is 31%, but I think it's not enough when we consider our solar and wind potential. Currently, energy and electricity is really expensive in Senegal, so we have to take into account sustainability and affordability and focus on issues of internal development and local effort. Because just as Sankara said, help that is conditioned is not help, it's slavery. So we have to get rid of help. And I would like to conclude by highlighting the issues of contextualization, because some things don't need external funding. Our own funding, internal funding, could help us develop adaptation and mitigation. So we thank you for everything that has been done, and we thank the conveners for inviting us, and we'll do our best in order to advance climate action in Senegal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senegal. I would now go to East Africa community, and then I'll come to Mali and then the communication.
Thank you very much, Honorable Moderator and Honorable Moses Kajwang. I am back. I've been here before I moved to East African Legislative Assembly, and I'm back with my green suit, and it have a coded message that we should make our continent green by planting more trees. So in honor of my wash and wear suit, please make sure you have planted 1,000 trees when you go back. On behalf of the East Africa Legislative Assembly, we commit that we will be very active in the climate change caucus and also do whatever that is possible to pass laws in the East African Legislative Assembly that will mitigate the effect of climate change. Again, I want to commit that once we are back with Honorable Amogin, we will make sure that we discuss this as a motion in the East African Legislative Assembly, and the declaration that have been made here by African leaders, we commit to support and make sure that it is discussed in the East Africa. Lastly, Honorable Moderator, we should not leave a critical mass of our population behind. That is persons with disabilities. In Africa, we have 100 million of them, and most of the disability are also caused indirectly by climate change, because in conflict in search of pasture and water, many are maimed, especially in the north, and we have witnessed an increase in the number of persons with disability. With 100 million persons with disability in Africa, we have more than 10 million of them sitting on wheelchairs. These wheelchairs can cost as more as $400 million. That is a factory that may be emitting more carbon. So once we are involved, we will also make sure that these factories that are produce our assisted devices like crutches, calipers, and wheelchairs are using renewable energy. Thank you, Honorable Moderator.
Thank you very much. I indulge you because you were speaking for a bigger bloc, and then also because you were speaking for persons with disability. I will take Malawi, and then Kofi Don Ago will take over.
Thank you so much, Honorable Moderator. As a Member of Parliament, Honorable Chairperson, take away home is that I think time has come as members of Parliament to realign the public expenditures in trying to promote and get finances for the climate adaptation and mitigation. I think Kenya has already done it. I heard Kenya saying that they have tripled their allocation towards climate. So instead of waiting for development partners to fund us, I think it's high time that members of Parliament, we should be able to sit down within our budget to do the realignment and see how best can we get resources to address issues of climate. And also, Honorable Chairperson, we would want to, as members of Parliament, to promote laws that regulate and that raise capital and finances for the climate adaptation and mitigation. Like in the case of Malawi, Honorable Chair, you may wish to note that Malawi introduced a carbon levy in trying to get finances for, climate adaptation and mitigation. The third one, Honorable Chairperson, is by using our oversight function as members of Parliament, we have to enhance the monitoring mechanisms to ensure that the transparency and accountability is there within the government system, so that the little resources we have should be utilized accordingly, and also support alternative business models that are more rooted in local communities, that will give employment to, employment and creation of jobs for the local communities by creating, Honorable Chairperson, cooperatives at a community level. Not also forgetting the involvement of private sector, Honorable Chair, in this discourse. We need to work with the private sector. It's a collective responsibility. We have all to unite and address issues of climate and in our respective member states. I submit, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll take the last statement from Kofi from the Communications Group. Use the next available mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. My issue has to do with communication on climate change. Currently, we have a group called Climate Communication and Local Governance in Africa, where we're mobilizing communicators on the African continent to look at climate communication. One thing that we've realized is that when you look at communication in respect to climate change, there's a very huge gap in the communication aspect. So it is important for organizations, for that matter, as we're championing climate issues, we look at communication. I must thank the Global Center on Climate Adaptation, and then the CVF for collaborating to do this program for members of Parliament, because members of Parliament are the real lawmakers, and they are in touch with their constituents. So going forward, I think that civil society organizations must also be involved, as other speakers have also indicated, because climate communication, it's the key to make sure that the issues will be comprehended by the people at the local level. Once members of Parliament are in touch with their people at the local level, I think is the best way to go. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. At this stage, I would like to, on behalf of the co-chairs of this dialogue, the Honorable Moses Kajwang of the Senate of Kenya, and Honorable Jacqueline Amogin of the East Africa Parliament and the chair of the African Parliamentarians Network for Climate Action, and my good self as a global chair of the Global Parliamentary Group of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, read the outcome statement, which is titled as the Parliamentarians Dialogue at the African Climate Summit, Forging Parliamentary Pathways for Effective Action. African countries vulnerable to climate change are increasingly missing out on opportunities for greater energy independence, as well as access to green investment and export opportunities. The continent needs to strengthen its mechanisms and frameworks for responding to and influencing the climate change agenda nationally, regionally, and internationally by leveraging all stakeholders, including parliaments. A resolute response is called for, one that encompasses comprehensive approaches incorporating the acceleration of adaptation through stronger international climate finance, widespread adoption of renewable energy sources, prioritizing energy efficiency, fostering the development of sustainable energy infrastructure, and creating economic opportunities at the same time. To achieve these objectives, it is imperative to instate judicious policy interventions that expedite necessary reforms, bolster investment, drive decisive climate action, and ensure equitable access to clean, affordable, and available energy resources. In this multifaceted pursuit, Africa can pave the way toward a greener, more sustainable future. African parliamentarians, including from the Climate Vulnerable Forum's Global Parliamentary Group and the African Parliamentarians Network for Climate Action, convened a parliamentarians dialogue on 4th and 6th September 2023 during the Africa Climate Summit held in Nairobi, Kenya, to discuss the pressing issue of climate change. The main objective of the dialogue was to identify key areas for strengthening parliamentarians' capacity to ensure effective oversight of the implementation of climate action and to build consensus on parliamentary action at continental level to champion the outcomes of the summit in the run-up to COP28 and beyond. We welcome and support the Pan-African Parliament Declaration of African Parliamentarians to the African Climate Summit issued on 1st September 2023. We also welcome and endorse the comments made in the African Leaders Nairobi Declaration, the commitment, made in the African Leaders Nairobi Declaration on climate change and call to action. Following a discussion around the following three themes, the parliamentarians' dialogue outlined its pathways for effective climate action as follows. Climate change adaptation and mitigation. Recognizing the urgent need for collective action to address the challenges faced by the African continent, the parliamentarians' dialogue underscored the proactive role that parliamentarians must play in implementing and advocating for climate-resilient policies and strategies. The dialogue welcomed Decision 19/5 of the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment on Item 9 of the Provisional Agenda to urgently deliver climate finance commitments at scale by developed country parties under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement, as well as the need for grant-based resources for African countries, particularly the implementation of adaptation action. The call to swiftly operationalize the global goal on adaptation was reiterated during the parliamentarians' dialogue. The participants pledged to support the full realization of the African Adaptation Acceleration Program and the successful implementation of the Climate Adaptation Country Compacts, owned and led by African countries. To bolster these initiatives, it is imperative that the roles of parliamentarians in their legislative, budgetary, and oversight functions remain integral, functioning as vital cornerstones to ensure government accountability and contributing to the achievement of the AAAP. Acknowledging the pivotal role of parliamentarians in advancing climate adaptation, the dialogue committed to establishing a specialized African Parliamentarians Working Group on Climate Adaptation within the broader Africa Parliamentarians Network for Climate Action, with the aim of strengthening the capacity of African parliamentarians to ensure effective oversight of the implementation of climate adaptation action. Renewable energy and just transition. The energy transition based on renewable energy was recognized as the most realistic solution to combating climate change in the parliamentarians' dialogue, which also echoed the desire of countries to commit to tripling renewable energy capacity worldwide. The potential of renewable energy to mitigate climate change and ensure energy security was acknowledged by the attendees. The dialogue agreed to work towards policies that encourage and accelerate the transition to clean and sustainable energy sources that align with Africa's unique circumstances and respect the continent's development agenda. The importance of African minerals in the global energy transition was underlined, as was the role of parliamentarians in securing effective oversight of the extractive industries to deliver economic benefits and minimize environmental impacts while contributing to climate change mitigation. The dialogue emphasized the need for implementation measures, including financial support, technology transfers, and capacity building, to ensure the effective adoption of renewable energy solutions. Capacity building, particularly among parliamentarians, plays a vital role in enhancing understanding of the energy transition through continuous learning and information sharing. Therefore, advocacy for capacity building initiatives that contributes to the enrichment of knowledge repository was strongly supported. Green growth and sustainable production. Acknowledging Africa's unique vulnerability to the impacts of the changing climate, the parliamentarians' dialogue affirmed the vital link between climate change and agriculture and pledged to support policies that promote climate-resilient agricultural practices, sustainable land management, and equitable access to food resources. The dialogue further stressed the importance of conserving biodiversity, forests, and water resources, and committed to address deforestation, promote ecosystem restoration, and protect vital ecosystems through legislative measures. In forging legislative pathways for climate action, the parliamentarians' dialogue recognizes and highlights the following commitments as key points of collaborative efforts. 1, commitment to climate action. Recognizing the role of legislation in driving change, the parliamentarians pledged to promote strong climate action in their respective countries and in Africa as a whole, and to strive to adopt policies that contribute to sustainable development, adaptation, and mitigation. 2, youth empowerment and inclusion. The parliamentarians recognize the energy and creativity of Africa's youth in shaping the climate discourse and agreed to provide platforms for youth engagement, including young parliamentarians, valuing their perspectives and fostering their leadership in climate-related initiatives. Gender-responsive approaches. Acknowledging the gender-related aspects of climate change, the parliamentarians will ensure that climate policies are both inclusive and attuned to addressing the specific needs and roles of women, persons living with disabilities who often bear a disproportionate burden of climate impacts. International collaboration. The parliamentarians will actively engage in international climate discourse, advocating for African interests and contributing to the global dialogue on climate solution. And 5, accountability and monitoring. The parliamentarians pledge to hold themselves and their governments accountable for the commitments they make at national, regional, and global levels. By convening the first accountability summit for parliamentarians at COP28, they will establish mechanisms to monitor progress, assess the effectiveness of policies, and drive continuous improvement. As African parliamentarians, we congratulate the Kenyan Parliament for hosting a successful parliamentarian dialogue. We stand united in their determination to combat climate change, safeguard the environment, and create a sustainable and prosperous future for all people. Colleagues, government, civil society, and the international community are called upon to join this crucial endeavor. End of statement. Thank you very much. So you can encourage people to make these statements formally in their parliaments.
Now that brings us to the end of that very intensive session, and I'm sure people are asking what next. Of course, our own chair of the Parliamentary Caucus on Conservation, Honorable Charity Kathambi, is going to drive the last session, which really is just a vote of thanks, before we will be joined by the Speaker of the Senate for some refreshments at the Parliamentary Garden. So I do not want us to stay too long between now and those refreshments, because the ones that are hot might get cold, and the ones that are cold might get hot. We want to encourage, if it is possible, for you to lay the Nairobi Declaration and this declaration of parliamentarians before your houses and bring a motion for its adoption. Because going back home, definitely, as is the case in the Kenyan Parliament, you have to justify and give a report of your foreign visit. And that will provide greater visibility to this declaration, and it will also allow your colleagues who are not able to come to Nairobi to internalize and to debate and to hopefully give even better proposals to add on to what we have resolved in Nairobi. I am looking for the Honorable Charity Kathambi. Oh, yeah, you keep shifting. But Charity, please come over as the Honorable Jacqueline Amongin makes an intervention.
Okay, Chair, sorry, I just wanted to commend the Honorable Dr. Mafo for reading the statement, but I would also like, before Honorable Charity gives a vote of thanks and closes, to call upon the members of the Champions for Climate Action, the members of Parliament, that the call is open, and this is the time that you should liaise with the national committees or Ministry of Environment, depending on which country you come from, so that the accreditation, you are accredited, because the deadline for COP accreditation will be sooner. So if you're not yet accredited with your country, it will be very hard to participate. And of course, it's a high time to start looking for resources to participate at the COP. And this time around, we want to go to the COP very organized as a globe, as a continent, and also we are going to continue lobbying with parliamentarians from other continents so that we go together as a strong parliamentarian's voice. We will also be organizing different events at the COP. So this is the right time for you to network with your country so that you go as a party and you're not just participating in the side events, but you're in the main participation. And lastly, as per the declaration, aware that the heads of states adopted a declaration yesterday, and most of these issues are supposed to feed into COP. So I would also like to add on our declaration that as we head to COP, we head to support the interests of the continent and also the interests of the declarations that have already been made by our leaders. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, Amir. Chair, my intervention is, couldn't it be proper for us to second and adopt as well?
Oh yes, Dr. Mafo, you did have a job.
To move
it's not, yeah. I think that's important.
Well, knowing that parliamentarians are very formal people, I would suggest someone to move for the adoption of the statement. A proposal and then a second, and then
I propose. David Olasankok, Member of Parliament, Yala.
I second and I second. I second from Malawi. Thank you.
Great. So, do you want me to put the question? As many as are in favor of the statement, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. The statement is duly adopted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. Let me start by thanking each and everyone, every presenter, the moderators. Allow me just to take a few minutes. Kindly, we are not going to take a lot of time because we have exhausted a lot of things. I'm Charity Kadhambi Chepkonye, Member of Parliament, Tijoro constituency, Nakuru County, Rift Valley in Kenya. I chair Parliamentary Caucus on Climate Change and also inclusive of the conservation. Allow me just to invite the presenters and kindly let's take a few minutes. Then we shall be calling our partners just for Thanksgiving. The first person I would like to call just for some few minutes comments is Ms. Anya Kasper Beretta, Director, Regional Program Energy Security and Climate Change in Sub-Saharan Africa, that is CAS.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Honorable Charity. I'm standing between you and the refreshment, so I will be very brief. This is really just a vote of thanks to all of you for the honorable members of parliament for really dedicating so much time and commitment to making this meeting possible and participating so actively throughout the day. I don't want to repeat the urgency that we're talking about because I really think the time of talking is over. It's really now the moment to walk the talk. The last COP has been an implementation COP in Egypt, and obviously the responsibility to hold governments into account if really actions are implemented is the parliament. And this has been said today, and I cannot stress enough this role of oversight and holding governments accountable. And at the same time, we have also heard that parliaments should act as climate champions, come up with own ideas and solutions to address the climate change. And I just would really like to challenge you before you're having hopefully the next meeting to really think 2-3 things that you can do in the meantime and come up and present those actions to your peers, because I think the mutual learning, as we have seen this morning, is really, really important. What is Kenya doing? How can Malawi learn? How this can be brought to Guinea? I think this is really an important point. And I just would like to give one example how, for me, a climate champion that has really demonstrated a will to action actually too, is first the Honorable Mafo, who is chairing the Climate Vulnerable Group, because he has really dedicated a lot of time bringing this together, so much action behind the scenes. And actually also the Honorable Moses Kajang, who is here, because it has not been a long time ago that we met in his office. And he said, could we not have this event, the parliamentarians, during the climate summit? And he has really demonstrated, that you are so able to action and that, the time of talking is over. And I really would like to thank you for that and applaud you that. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. Allow me to invite Ms. Rachel Mudilo, Coordinator, Climate Vulnerable Forum.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Rachel Mundilo, and I coordinate the Climate Vulnerable Forum's Global Parliamentary Group at the Global Center on Adaptation. So today definitely marks a milestone showcasing your unwavering commitment to as parliamentarians to champion climate action within your respective legislative bodies. So our aim, of course, is to continue to provide the support that we've been giving you in terms of ensuring that you develop effective climate action through your legislative means, not only within your parliaments, but also at a global scale. So we eagerly anticipate your presence at the CVF's parliamentary group dialogue during the IPU's General Assembly in Luanda, Angola, scheduled for next month. as well as for the Accountability Summit, which is scheduled for COP28. I would like to express sincere gratitude to our partners, including CAS, UNDRR, the Global Renewables Congress, IRENA. I think you've always come to the table as it pertains to providing support to members of parliament on the climate change agenda. I would also like to extend a heartfelt thank you to all the dedicated support staff from the Kenyan Parliament, as well as from our respective institutions who've worked tirelessly to ensure that this event takes place. But most importantly, I would like to extend my gratitude and my organization's gratitude, rather, to the honorable members for heeding the call to action and sparing your valuable time to spend the day with us during the Africa Climate Summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow me to invite Mr. Ricardo Toxiri, Program Officer, IRENA.
Thank you very much, Honorable Charity. It is a pleasure to be here at the closing part of this great day that we had today here with all of you. I will be very brief. I want really to thank all of you that were able to share so many insightful experiences, so many also calls for action that you are making here today, and that are also reflected in the parliamentary statement that was just approved. As IRENA, we take this opportunity to congratulate the work that you are doing, but we also want to further emphasize that there is a more strong need to continue to have your parliaments, not only in Africa, but in also other regions, to be much more proactive and to really be leading the energy transition. We have seen in the statement that there are references also to other, let's say, stakeholders, youth were highlighted, and we really think that Africa in particular, with all the young population that you have, should be really embraced as part also of these processes. So we hope that the next time that we will meet, perhaps hopefully also at COP28, where together with the Global Parliamentary Group of CVF and also the Global Renewables Congress, we are organizing and supporting a Parliamentary Accounting Summit to see you there and to hopefully have also some young parliamentarians as part of your delegation. Thank you very much. It's an honor. And again, thank you very much to also Honorable Marfo and to the Parliament of Kenya for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ricardo. And lastly, allow me to call Ms. Lena Dente, Senior Program Manager, Energy at the Just Transition World Future Council.
Thank you, Madam Chair, honorables who are here, distinguished guests and hosts. It's been a great pleasure to be here these last hours where we've discussed many important issues. Our work at the World Future Council and our project, the Global Renewables Congress, works to ensure that the rights of future generations are heard. And this by necessity includes climate action, of course. And with the Global Renewables Congress, we focus on the role of parliamentarians and their absolutely crucial position to play in assuring that climate action is raised to the level of action and not just talking. To that end, actually, we do look forward to bringing you together again, convening you to share the solutions that you have, to bring knowledge to each other, to innovate with each other, learn from each other, and build capacity, both for your own selves and for your constituencies. So I hope that when we convene in a future dialogue, we'll be able to highlight and celebrate your climate successes and measurable positive impact. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, our presenters. Allow me to take this time to thank each one of us. Thank you, our development partners, the organizers, our colleagues, members of parliament from Africa. I know after this meeting, most of you will be traveling. We want to wish you journey masses. Actually, this is so motivating that we have sat in Africa, in Nairobi, in relation with the first Africa Climate Summit. That is after that 1 year back when people started talking about climate change. Thank you so much, because it is a voice of legislators in Africa that it is true. Climate change is real, And now we have made a decision to take an action. And the truth of the matter, as we said as legislators, above all, it's finances, finances, finances. Finances, availability, affordability, and accessibility. Therefore, for today's meeting, it is just an encouragement that all of us legislators in Africa, once we go back to our nations, kindly let us get more motivated. I think we are so much inspired. We have been given a lot of hope. Even the people we represent in our constituencies, in our counties, this is purely hope that we are starting a serious journey and we are here to be counted. When people talk about the people who brought change in the world, we are part of it. Therefore, colleagues, we are here. Let us be encouraged that we have space to make this world better for each one of us. And lastly, I'll be requesting you, once we finish the meeting, kindly will let us go to the garden for refreshment. And another point I forgot, which we were sharing with Senator Kajwang here. For our development partners who are here, we really appreciate you so much. We have found a big loophole when it comes to the capacity building for the legislators. Therefore, we are planning to have more capacity building meetings so that it can also give us another good platform, the way Anya has said, that we need more forums so that as legislators, we can get a platform where we are going to continue sharing our good practices, our successful stories when it comes to the matters of legislations, the issues of the challenges and the ideas we have. Therefore, as for us legislators from Kenya, we feel humbled that colleagues, you have really sat to this moment. It has showed how serious it is. I wish also on this platform to be humbly to thank His Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, for accepting and also pushing to have the Africa Climate Challenge to be in Nairobi, to unite all heads of state from Africa, and also to bring all the nations from the world together in Nairobi. God bless you so much. As you go home, go well, and let us also continue doing our respective programs in our respective constituencies and counties. As we said, as legislators, we have to be the model. We have not to walk the talk, and we have not to do what we have said we do the best. God bless you so much. God bless you so much. Thank you so much. And the meeting is adjourned. Let us, all of us, go to the garden for the refreshments.
Well done. You represented us at the international stage at the summit.
Whoa, I was under pressure.